Aloha and welcome to the basic setup for your first shot with the JVC GY-HC 500. This is the longer version of this video. In this video, I'll be pausing and zooming in on various things and offering a little bit more explanation behind what it is that I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So this is, again, the longer version of the video. If you're looking for a quick refresher, you should probably stop now and just go grab the 4-minute version. But if you're really looking to understand a little more about the camera, in particular to hear my thought processes on what's happening as I'm working with the camera, go ahead and stick with this one. All right, so just like in the other video, the bottom left-hand corner is a close-up of the camera itself, so you should be able to see me manipulating the controls. The top left-hand corner of the screen is the wide shot of the entire set. So you can see the camera, you can see the set and the lighting, you can see me, you can even see the camera that's used for the close-up, the viewfinder for it there. The top right-hand corner is the output from the JVC's viewfinder. So if you were looking at the JVC camera, this is exactly what you would be seeing. And we'll move back and forth between these as needed. So let's get started. Now, this slate that I'm doing is for the purposes of the training video only. It has nothing to do with what you would normally be doing on set, but I need to synchronize the 3 cameras plus the recorder that is capturing the JVC footage, so that's why I'm doing a slate. All right. So walking in here, now let me go ahead and pause. Looking at the viewfinder on the JVC camera, I can see that it's really, really dark. I can barely see what's going on. Looking at the side of the camera or looking at the viewfinder from the camera, either way, I can tell that the neutral density was left on by whoever had the camera before. Right now, the neutral density is set to 1/4. So I'm just going to start by turning it off. There's no reason for me to have neutral density in an environment that's not terribly bright, and this environment is not terribly bright. So here we go. I flip the neutral density off. And you can see that the image got a bit brighter. Still not really usable. Let me pause again. Still not really usably bright, and that's going to come back to haunt me in a minute, but I'm going to go ahead and move forward. So playing again, the next thing I want to do is worry about my white balance. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and then I'm going to find my white balance target. I've got this lovely piece of white foam core I keep lying around. I'm going to set that on the stage. This is really great for both white balancing and exposure. So now I want to zoom in until that white object fills my screen. Let me pause here real quick. Notice that I'm checking to see on the white balance switch if it is set to A, B, or preset. I want it to be set to A or B. It honestly doesn't matter if it's set to A or B. What matters is that it is not set to preset. Having established that it's set to A, I'm now going to push the little button, and I think it looks like a guy with a bow tie, that's going to tell the camera to perform the white balance. Let's resume. And here we go. I push the button. And it didn't work. I got an error. Low light. It's not bright enough. Let me pause real quick. Okay, I got an error telling me that it's low light. There's not enough light. Now, clearly, there's plenty of light in this room. I've got production lights set up. So I'm just going to start opening the iris a little bit to let some more brightness in. I'm not worried about proper exposure yet. I just want to get enough light through the lens so that I can do a white balance. So let me open the iris up. And you'll see that it gets brighter. And now I'm going to push that white balance button again. And success, we have a white balance value. It's 4900K. All right, let me pause real quick. Let's take a look at the camera lens. You might not have noticed this already, but there are actually 3 rings on this lens. Each of these controls a different function. The ring that is closest to the camera body controls the iris. So if I need a different f-stop, I'm going to turn that ring, the one that is closest to the body. The one that's in the middle is zoom. I can zoom manually by twisting that ring, just like I can zoom by pushing on the zoom servo on the opposite side. And the big one closest to the lens shade, the one that's farthest from the body of the camera, is the focus ring. So you'll see me work with both the iris ring and the focus ring as we move forward. All right, let's continue. Now that I've got my white balance, I'm going to zoom out a little bit so I can see more, and I'm going to start worrying about the exposure. I'm going to open and close the iris ring until I see zebra bars where I think they should be. Now, in this case, my zebra bars are set to 90%. zebra bars tell me it should be bright. So that big white piece of foam core should be covered with zebra bars, and it is. It's not the only thing that has zebra bars, but I know that it should be bright. Let's get it out of the way there. So you can see I've still got zebra bars on the Woody's Roundup show and just a hint of them in the Bumble's fur there, and that's fine. All right, I'm moving on to focus now. Let me pause. I want to zoom in on the Bumble, or Woody, it wouldn't matter, but I want to zoom in as far as I can. Not most of the way, not part of the way, but all of the way. This does two things. One, it lets me see the detail more clearly. Two, it collapses the depth of field, so my focus will be more accurate. All right, let's resume. So now that I've zoomed in as far as I can, I'm going to focus and get those eyeballs just as sharp as I can get them. And again, you'll see the zebra bars crawling just a little bit in the reflections on the eye. Now I'm going to zoom back out to set up my shot. And that looks pretty good. Let me get it locked down here. All right. I'm going to pause real quick before I move on. This is a perfectly fine shot, and I could start recording just like this. I have a good white balance, I have a good exposure, and I have good focus. But looking at the screen, I noticed that I'm shooting at f4.5. That's relatively wide open. It means I don't have very much depth of field. If one of my talents starts moving around, they're going to go out of focus very quickly. Okay, it's not going to happen with my toys, but if it was a real person, right? If the Bumble were to get up and start dancing or something, should go out of focus. I really wish that I could close the iris down a little bit. Okay, if I just close the iris down, this picture will get too dark. So I need to think of a way to compensate for that. What are my options? I've already turned off the neutral density, so I can't get any more brightness that way. If I add neutral density, it's going to get darker. That's the opposite of what I want to happen. I'm shooting at ISO 800, so I could go to a higher ISO. But I don't want to do that because if I raise my ISO, that means I'm going to start adding video noise to the picture. And I don't need to add video noise to this. There's just nothing to be gained there. So my last option is I need to change the shutter speed. Now, the shutter speed should be on the viewfinder, and it should be appearing in between the f-stop and the ISO, but you'll notice there's only empty space there. There's no shutter speed. So this tells me that I need to play around with the settings. There are two places that the shutter speed is accessed on the left side of the camera. One is the button named Shutter. So I'm going to find that button, and I'm going to push it, and you'll see it toggling through various different options. So when I push it once, let me pause so we can look at that. You see what popped up on the screen. Now in that empty space, you see AE plus or minus 0, and then underneath it, you see 1/60th of a second with a highlighted A just to the left of it. Okay. That top part, that top line, AE plus or minus 0, you can kind of ignore that for now. It's telling you that if you were running on automatic exposure, the camera is going to adjust it by nothing. It's going to be an accurate automatic exposure. This comes in useful in certain specific situations. Let's not talk about those right now. Underneath it, that's the important bit. 1/60th of a second is my current shutter speed, but the A tells me that the camera is set out on that automatically, which means I am not going to be able to change it at the moment. And if I push that button again, let me resume, you'll see that it simply says the shutter is off. So I have my choice of letting it be automatically controlled or not being controlled at all. All right, let me pause again. What we're looking for is the option to control it. So we engage that using the joystick. So again, in the center of the left-hand side of the camera, that largish button is actually a joystick. You can push it up, down, left, or right, or you can poke it straight in and it turns into a button. So if I poke it straight in, it's going to activate the manual shutter speed control, and I'll be able to change it. Let's resume. Here I go. I'm going to poke it and watch the screen. Now it tells me 1/60th. So if I start pushing the joystick up, you'll see I can make the shutter speed faster. That's the opposite of what I want to do. Things are getting dark. But if I push it down, I can go down to 1/30th of a second. Now that's actually what I do want to do. Now notice when I push it down to 1/30th, it gets crazy bright. There are zebras everywhere. I'm now overexposed, but that's what I wanted, because now I can grab my iris and start closing the iris down until the zebra bars recede. And I'm looking to get zebra bars just on the top half of the Woody's Roundup sign. That's exactly how it was before I touched anything. All right, so I'm going to open and close until I land right there. So at f5.6, that's perfect. Let me pause real quickly. I've got zebra bars in the same place that I had zebra bars earlier, but now I'm shooting at f5.6 instead of, what was it, f4.5? I've closed down almost an entire stop, and I was able to do that by slowing my shutter down from 1/60th to 1/30th. This means I now have a little more depth of field than I had before. Again, not as much as I would like, but more than I had before. So if the Bumble starts dancing, or if Woody gets up for whatever reason, I've got a better chance of them staying in focus. All right, resuming. This is it. I've got my focus, my white balance, and my exposure. Now would be the time I would start recording if I was going to record. Let me pause real quickly. I don't actually have an SD card in the camera. If you look at the top center of the screen where those dashes are, that is where my time would appear if I had media in there. Also on the left-hand side, underneath the battery indicator, you can see that it's looking for the external hard drive, actually, not the SD card. And again, that dash tells you there's no media there. So I can't actually start recording. But I am ready to. I've got my focus, I've got my white balance, and I've got my exposure set. Now, there's not a lot of reason to go through a specific order. A lot of it becomes a opportunity thing, just what's convenient. You could focus first and then do exposure and then do white balance. One thing you will find, and I showed you this, if your exposure is off too far, if it's too bright or too dark, the white balance won't work. So you'll have to at least be in the ballpark with exposure before you can white balance. But other than that, as long as you get all three of those steps successfully done, your focus, your white balance, and your exposure, what you record should look good.